If you want to build AI apps, you're going to find tons of content about using JavaScript, React, Next.js, but not that much about Python, which is strange because a lot of the AI and machine learning is actually more centered around Python. So you may actually want to use Python for your app as well. Maybe people in your team are already familiar with Python. So in this video, I want to show you how you can build out a full stack AI Python app. So I have this AI YouTube thumbnail creator, so a user can type a prompt, Python AI tutorial. I can pick the style and then I can click on generate. Now notice it's saying queuing. So typically when you are going to create an AI app, you're not going to leave the user waiting while you're generating some artifact. Instead, you're going to hand off the job to some kind of queue. You're going to let the user immediately know, thank you, we received your order. And in the background, you're going to generate it, right? So after a few seconds, it is finished here, right? You need to store these artifacts, in my case, images somewhere. And then I have a history of everything that's been generated and I can search over that. So if I say artificial intelligence, it still services this one as well, even though it's not a literal match, because I have hybrid search, which means also if it's semantically related, it will show me this. Right, so it's using embeddings. So what kind of tech stack do you need? How does it look like to build a full stack AI Python app like this? AI YouTube thumbnail generator app. Because I'm a YouTuber, I have to create all these thumbnails myself manually. It's a lot of hassle. It would be great if we can generate those with AI. So what would be the tech stack for something like this if we're going to do it with Python in the Python world? Well, actually, there are some big differences between the JavaScript world and the Python world. So for our web framework, right, we're going to build a web app. We need a front end as well as a back end. Now, in the world of JavaScript, there's a trend to combining them, right? So Next.js, for example, is one app. You get a React front end and basically a Node.js backend. But I'm deploying one app. I'm building one app. It does simplify things to a large extent. And there are other frameworks in the world of JavaScript like 10-stack start and other ones as well. Now in the world of Python, if I want to build a full stack Python app, React on the front end. But this is going to be a separate React app, right? So this is going to be its own app, but we still need a backend. Now in the world of Python, we have a couple of options. There's FastAPI, there is Django, Flask. These are some really popular options. And honestly, you can go with any of them. They're all pretty good. They have certain pros and cons. So Django, for example, is probably a more batteries included framework. So you have like authentication out of the box, whereas FastAPI and Flask are more lightweight. So with FastAPI, for example, it's really all about creating these API endpoints, and it actually automatically creates docs for those API endpoints that you create, so you can actually interact with them as you're developing in a UI. You can trigger them from a UI. It's really slick for that particular use case. And I would say that is probably a modern option right now. So I'm going to go with FastAPI here for the backend. Right, so this is a bit different than from the JavaScript world because I have two separate apps. I need to deploy two separate apps. It also changes your folder structure repo. Like, is it going to be a monorepo or is it going to be two separate Git repos? Well, we're going to stick to a monorepo here. So slightly more complicated, but it does allow you to use Python on the back end. So if you do have that Python background or you work in a team with a lot of people with Python backgrounds, this is a major plus. And the React app is going to be a React Vite app. Probably that is the biggest difference. We probably want to have a database as well, but I would not change the database simply because we're using a Python stack. So I've actually really enjoyed using Supabase. They offer a Postgres database and they were actually kind enough to sponsor the video as well. I've had a good time working with them. And they've been growing very fast since all the vibe coding has started, right? So they're powering some of these vibe coding platforms. So if you're using a coding agent, which you most likely are, they tend to be really good at integrating Supabase into your project. So I think that's a legitimate reason to actually use Supabase. So they offer a Postgres database. So if I want to persist some data, like if the user can generate these images from a prompt, we may want to store their prompt or a summary of their prompt somewhere. We want to persist that data. That can be in a database. So here in Supabase, you can create a project. So I have a database option here. If you quickly want to add some authentication, it's all integrated here as well. And there's also a storage option here. So if we want to store the images somewhere, we can use their storage API. So this is also a great option for our app here. So they offer a vector store and embeddings support using Postgres and pgvector, right? So if you're building an AI app and you want to, for example, search, you want to implement AI search, well, you want to store a bunch of things in a vector store, or you want to create embeddings out of them, this can be a great option. They actually have a Python client for managing these unstructured embeddings. So I may want to implement semantic search. So I've enjoyed using Supabase also for JavaScript-based stacks. Now, typically in the world of, many tech stacks, you have something in between here called an ORM. Prisma or Drizzle in the world of JavaScript. In the world of Python, there is SQLAlchemy and SQL model, right? So we may want to use an ORM, for example, to have more type safety when you make API calls to your database. And these ORMs typically also help you with migrations, right? So if you're changing the shape of your database schemas, typically you want to have a migration, right? So in the world of JavaScript, Prisma helps you out with those migrations. In the world of Python, there's something called Alembic, which does something similar. Now, if you're building an AI app, at some point you need to make API calls to an actual AI model or inference provider. But let's say we're making API calls to OpenAI. Typically, this is done from your backend because you need to use your credentials. We don't want to expose them on the front end. And you can make API calls directly to these AI model providers, but in the world of JavaScript, or TypeScript I should say, there is a really nice SDK for this called the AI SDK. The benefit of this is that it has a more universal API because you may also want to use other AI providers, but the API for that doesn't change. You just specify a different model in that case. And it's not only for text generation, it's also for image generation. So really good developer experience with this. And the closest option for something similar here in the world of Python is probably Pydantic AI. So this is a little bit different, but they also support virtually every model and provider. So OpenAI, Anthropic, Gemini. It helps you with observability. It helps you with type safety and a bunch of other things here that can be helpful for building AI apps or agents. So instead of making API calls directly to OpenAI, you may want to use some kind of AI toolkit in between there to orchestrate those API calls to the AI models that you're going to make. Now, typically when you're building AI apps, there is something else here in between. So typically when you get a request from the front end, right, maybe the user submits a prompt to generate an image, we are not going to immediately send a request to the AI provider and let the user wait for that. Typically, this is done with some kind of queuing system or background jobs. Right? Some tasks that you hand off to an AI model may take quite some time, maybe even a minute or so. We cannot keep the user hanging here waiting for that. So typically there's an incoming request to our backend, and we immediately respond with something like, okay, we received your request for an image, and we're going to put that in a queue. Right, we're going to have some kind of a background job, a queue system. So we can use Redis, which will act as like a message broker, as it's called. And then we can hand off the actual task to, well, in the world of Python, we have a Celery or BullMQ, which you can also use for Node.js. They're going through some kind of queuing system first. From there, we will make the API calls to an AI inference provider, which we probably want to store in Supabase, right? So we will get some image back, and that task can then also simply store that in R as well, and perhaps using an ORM for that as well, right? So we immediately respond to the user, hey, we received your request, just wait a bit. In the background, we're already going through a queuing system, and at some point the image will be finished and stored in our database. Now, how do we then update the UI for the user with the actual finished image? Well, very often it's done with polling. So every 10 seconds or so, the front end will make a request to the backend asking, is it ready yet? The backend will check the database if there's already an image, or the status of the job. So initially it may say no, and after a few requests it says yes, and it sends back the image. This is very common for AI apps because doing AI inference often takes some time and also just generally requires a little bit more sophistication with handling it. We may also want to prioritize tasks from paying users over free trial users, for example. So there's a bunch of logic involved there. Now, FastAPI does have something called background task, which you may try using here, but from my sense, this is not really the same as a background job, like what we would get here. This seems to be more meant for if you've already returned a response to the UI, if you quickly want to do something after. This is, I think, very similar to the recently introduced after function in Next.js in the world of JavaScript. So if you want to do some quick work after you've returned a response, that may be something you want to use, but for a use case like this, generating things in the background, I think you do want to go with a dedicated background jobs type of setup. So that's a full stack AI app with Python in my view. A lot of the other services that you're going to use they would be the same as in the JavaScript world. So the other typical services that you would want to add to a more sophisticated app would be these ones. But most of the providers, they have some kind of Python SDK or Node SDK. So Stripe, for example, has an SDK for both. There's Resend for email. You can use them in Node.js, but also in Python. Product analytics, right? So there's PostHog. We can use that here as well as in JavaScript. We can just use GitHub Actions for our app here as well. It may require a little bit more setup because we have a decoupled front end and back end. And actually another common one that you want to add at some point is some kind of AI search as well. So actually with Supabase, it's actually very easy as well because they have the vector store embedding support, and you can implement semantic search and the hybrid search, so for both keywords as well as for meaning. They actually have some really cool examples also with image search. So if you are implementing something with images and you want to search by images, that may be an option for you as well. We can use Playwright for testing, but I do recommend using the Python plugin. So that's mostly for browser-based testing. I guess for backend testing, you can use PyTest, whereas in the JavaScript world, it would be Jest or vtest. So a lot of that is kind of the same. Now, the exception would probably be hosting. So hosting, if you have a Next.js app, I'm just hosting it on, let's say, Vercel. That's one app I have to host. If you have two separate apps, it does complicate hosting a little bit because, well, they need to talk to each other. If you're going to host them on different platforms, you may run into a few issues. So, of course, hosting two separate apps is always going to be more cumbersome than hosting one app. And so we can for sure host the React app on Vercel. I'm actually not sure if we can host the FastAPI backend there or if it would be a good experience. There's also render.com, there's Railway. You can also go directly with Cloud Run. Of course, you can also host on a VPS. So pretty much the same. So this would be in a nutshell the architecture of a full stack AI Python app. All right, so let's actually check out the app again and how the app is structured, right? So somebody can type a prompt, right? So in terms of architecture, the prompt will go to our backend, go through some kind of queuing system, and ultimately some inference, and it will store the result in Supabase. So the app here is mostly powered by Supabase here on the backend. Very often, if you're building an AI app and you're generating all these things for your users, you want to give them an efficient way of searching as well. So we ideally can have some kind of hybrid search. So if I search for eatery, it will give me the thumbnails I generated, even though relevant to eatery, even though eatery is not literally in the actual text. Right? So here it also services a result for a restaurant because it's semantically related to eatery. If I search for JS, it also gives me this result for JavaScript, even though it's not literally JS. It knows that JS and JavaScript are semantically related. So I have hybrid search here. So it works with exact keyword matches, but also with semantic matches. So that is actually also possible, very easy to do with Supabase as well. So let's quickly look at the code here. So yeah, you can see already that if you're decoupling the front end from the back end, you already have the issue with folder structure. So this is one monorepo, so one Git repo, but I do split up the folder structure here into API, which is where I have my FastAPI, and then web is just going to be that React feed application. And then I have a worker here. This is for that Celery. This is where we can run background tasks, right? So from the front end, the user submits a prompt. Okay, so I won't go over the front end here too much. It's just a bunch of markup. We receive that here on our back end. This is a FastAPI backend, and this will actually pass off the task to Celery here. So here we have a Celery app using Redis. So here we generate the image. So it will actually upload it here to the Supabase storage, right? So that is basically this path here. So it will actually store it here in a bucket here in Supabase. You can see I have a bunch of images generated here. You can preview them in here as well. And then our database just stores the path to that image. So if we take a look at some of these rows, right? So here we have a generation and we can see it has an ID, title, status, completed. And here there is an image path. So we just need to have a reference to the actual image path in the bucket. Now notice it's doing something else here, which is it generates an embedding. So out of this prompt, ultimately, it creates an embedding, and we can store that here in Supabase database as well, so that we can later search for this, right? So this is how we can make this semantic search work later, right? So we can generate an embedding and store that right along the other data of this row, right? So here I'm doing a vector search in the embeddings file I have here. So it's using the pg vector RPC function, and Basically how it works is when the user searches, we create an embedding out of that as well, and then we compare the embeddings to see how close they are. Right? Very easy to set up with Supabase actually. Relatively easy because the coding agents are actually quite familiar with Supabase. So, we're coding with AI a lot these days, and it does help a lot if you use a backend that the coding agents are already familiar with. But that is in a nutshell what we are doing here in this full stack AI Python app. So I hope this helps you out with building out your own full stack AI Python apps. In any case, make sure you check out Supabase. You can find a link in the description. Thank you for watching, and I hope to see you in the next one. Bye.